Happy Thursday and welcome back to the Wolff Den presented by Win Again Academy. Check out the networking events that Mark Moyer is doing in the club room, winagainacademy.com. Today's guest, Dr. Dan Schaefer, someone I met at one of Mark's networking events. How's everything going today? Welcome to the Wolff Den.
How you doing, Matt? Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, great to have you here, and it's going to be looking forward to an interesting conversation about a variety of topics. For the people listening or watching who don't know who you are, just give them a quick intro and then we'll get into everything.
I'm a fractional psychological strategist for business and sports. I work with mind game strategies for people who run businesses globally and also who are professional and student athletes and aspiring student athletes. So it's all mind game strategies.
And everyone, I mean, the mental part of life and everything is such a big part of it, certainly in sports. One thing that comes to mind for me was Chuck Knobloch and Rick Ankiel, right? This guy, professional his whole life, wakes up one day and can't throw the ball from second base to first base. And Rick Ankiel, pitcher, was going all kinds of wild, reinvented himself as an outfielder. Is that the type of stuff that you're talking about?
Yes, and I think you bring up an important topic. When an athlete, professional or student athlete, feels that they're losing something, when they're not performing at their absolute best and they know it, my question is, who do they talk to? They are alone at the top. They can't talk to a coach because coaches will pull them out of a game. If they go to a team psychologist, there could be some doubt created about them. So most of my work, matter of fact, all of my work is under the radar. So I've worked in almost every sport except cricket at this point on performance. So it's identifying. Well, I'll give you an example. I have a client who's an ultra runner. She runs the Badwater through Death Valley, 135 miles through Death Valley. And she became a client some years ago because she found out that at the very beginning of the race, she got angry. She's a Marine. She got angry. And she said, I carried anger for 100 miles. It drained me. And then she became involved. She switched over into MMA cage fighting. And at 55, she won her last MMA fight in 49 seconds. And when they asked her what she attributed her success to, she said, well, I'm an ultra runner. You can never tire me out. And then she mentioned a whole bunch of people that helped her. And I called her after the fight. And I said, Jody, you never mentioned me. She said, do you think I'm giving your name to somebody I'm going to fight in 4 weeks or a month, 5 weeks, and whatever? So most of my clients never, ever talk about me.
I think, it's an interesting point. I want to delve into that a little bit. Just comes to mind. There's a Netflix movie called Bruised with Halle Berry. And it's a great story about, she was an MMA fighter at the top of her game. And she got in the ring and something happened and she left the ring. And years later, she tries to get back in. And it's a great story about really the roadblocks in life and getting out of your own way, which I want to talk about. But I do want to talk about I want to challenge you a little bit on the people who don't want to give their secrets. I think there's a lot of value to, best practices and sharing stuff and competition in that way. Some people might look at that, and I see both sides of it. I understand it. But some people might look at that as, well, look, I'm confident in my ability. I don't care who you talk to, because if someone's getting the same advice and you're operating almost on the same playing field, if my talent is better, it's gonna overcome whatever advantage they think they might have by operating in the same thing.
Well, if we want to flip that back into business or into sports, I mean, I did a program. I worked for 25 years with hockey goaltenders, and I did a program for about 95 hockey goaltenders about 15 years ago. And I did this clinic. And when it was over, I said, are there any questions? And there were absolutely no questions. I said, what could I have done not to have any questions? And after the program was over, I had these kids all come up to me and say, I would never ask a question in front of somebody I'm competing with. People don't, whatever when somebody talks about best practice sharing, I come back to my restaurant example. Go into a restaurant, find a soup that you really love or a recipe you really love, and ask the chef for the recipe. He's never given you the whole recipe.
Yeah, but that's more proprietary stuff. So I get it. Look, it's a whole conversation. We get into that. The important thing is that people want to get better, right? And
absolutely.
They want to find the ways. To me, it's business, it's life, it's sports, it's what can I do to get out of my own way?
Well, I'll show you a great example. Everybody on this phone call can sit up straight in their chair and start to move your right foot clockwise, round and round, round and round, round and round. And with your right hand, draw a big number 6 in the air. Go ahead, big number 6, Matt. See your foot go backwards?
Yeah.
So the fact is, you can't afford 1 second of distraction. So a lot of what I work with athletes is what distracts you. I have a young woman who's 4th in the country in gymnastics. She said, when I go into a gym, she said, the noise from other people cheering me, all that distracts me. So we have a strategy to help her control her mind game and block those sounds out. It's like, you talk to a baseball player. I had a guy that I talked to from the Mets some years ago, and he said to me, I said, what's concentration to you? He said, concentration to me is thinking about absolutely nothing at just the right time. Because when you think about it, Matt, a hockey goalie with a puck coming at him at 100 miles an hour, he doesn't have time to think. So he has to rely on his subconscious mind and his training and all the stuff that's in there. And that's what we help to accomplish for people.
Yeah. So how did you get into this? You're a doctor. What made you want to become a doctor? And
well, that's a great question. My family owned 225-year-old businesses in Brooklyn, New York. One was a real estate company. The other was a funeral service business. And I noticed that parents had a lot of difficulty explaining death to their kids. So in 1986, I wrote a book called How Do We Tell the Children? I was teaching out of Columbia. And then ultimately, in about 92, I was contacted by the Pentagon, and I worked with the Pentagon on military loss, looking at the impact that loss and life transition has on errors, omissions, accidents, and safety. Started to do some programs around that. The next edition of my book came out. It was around 9/11. I did a lot of work with that. And then I was involved in a program for students where we looked for obstacles to their performance. And I was paired up with a hypnotist. And she hypnotized the whole audience. I found it fascinating. I took a lot of training, and I found that hypnosis can really dramatically improve somebody's confidence, performance, concentration. And that's what I started to do. So I started out with golfers. I guarantee golfers 3 to 6 strokes with their golf game without ever touching a club. It's a client attraction business development program for large organizations. Xerox in Virginia got 200 CEOs come to an event for that. I'll be happy to talk to anybody about that. But at the end of the day, I was referred. I was at a sports luncheon at a restaurant in Manhattan, and I asked a professional football player, did his teammates see themselves as a CEO of their own company? And he said no. So he called me back. I worked with him for about 2 or 3 years. And then he referred me to Chad Pennington, who wrote the foreword to my book. The title of my book is Click, C-L-I-C-K. And we worked for a long time. And then finally, it just transcended into global business. So I was I was in Singapore on a project for Hewlett Packard, and my future daughter-in-law, who lived there, introduced me to the Singapore Golf Association. So I worked with two of their pros while I was over there on another project. But it's mind game strategies, you know. And
Yeah.
so I look for people who say, you know, I ask a fundamental question, Matt. What do you personally need to have happen right now that's not happening? And what's getting in the way? A lot of what I discovered, which might be interesting to your listeners, is that a lot of what I discover is invisible. I had a guy who was a real estate developer. We were working on negotiation strategies for contracts. And he said to me, by the way, I'm a 12 handicap golfer, but I can't play well 50 yards in all the time, just sometimes. So I said to him, okay, so what we did is, to make a long story short, we discovered that the only time he can't play well 50 yards in is when he's playing against somebody who makes more money than he does. And the guy makes high seven figures. So who would figure?
Yeah, that's a weird.
Oh, it's why, you know, when we talk about, when you put on the note on the bottom here about 2027, every one of my clients is in 2027 working backwards. Where do you see yourself? What's your dream in 2027? And let's look backwards from there to find anything that could possibly disrupt your plans.
How often, like, a lot of people don't know what the problems are, and that's where someone who's talking to them can help them, or know what the mistakes might be. What percentage? I mean, do you find that most people don't know it, or they already know it, they just don't admit it, or they know it and they don't want to explore it?
Some of it is very confusing. Some of it's based in from when they were children. I have no idea why this guy who makes high seven figures is intimidated by somebody who makes more money. I have no idea. But the fact is that that's something we had to identify and get out of the way. And so, you know, it's really and it plays off with a lot of different people. So sports is interesting in that, you know, people get one shot at making their next deal, making their next play. It's just the next play.
Yeah. It's mental. I mean, we said at the top, the mental aspects of sports is so important. I'm a big advocate for mental health, and that's come to the forefront lately with all these athletes who, you know, forget about not being able to perform if your mind isn't right. You can get injured badly depending on what sport you're playing. So you're a danger to yourself, and then in a team sport, you might be a danger to the other people out there. So
absolutely,
how much attention to the mind is given to people at the bottom, like growing up when I'm a kid, and in middle school and high school, these athletes?
Well, it's why, and I can forward something to you, but I have a program for parents of student athletes. I did it with hockey parents. I did it with lacrosse parents. Basically, it's how you talk to your kid, and how you help them with the way they talk to themselves. I have a client right now who's one of the top gymnasts in the country. And I said to her, you need my permission before you beat the S out of yourself. You gotta call me first. And she called me last week. It's funny. And then she smoked a performance on Saturday. But, you know, see, one of the interesting things about self-talk, everybody talks about the way you talk to yourself. So my question to you would be, what is Matt saying to Matt when Matt overhears Matt talking to Matt? Sometimes it's positive. Trash talk is very effective. It works best on yourself because it's in your own voice. But one of the real interesting things is people who routinely tell themselves what they don't want to have happen find that they get the complete opposite result, because the subconscious mind never hears a negative command. So it doesn't hear don't. Look at the Giants playing the Patriots. Very first game, Patriots 18 straight games. Somebody said to me, who do you think is going to win? I said, I think the Patriots are going to find a way to lose to the Giants. So they lost. And when they came back the second time, you know that they were coming into the stadium saying, we don't want to lose again. And they lost again. So people have to be very careful about telling themselves what they don't want to have happen.
What about that's interesting because I'm visioning things how they happen and how they're going to play out and I use that in some ways to try and figure out, hey, what if I get this negative reaction or this roadblock? How am I going to overcome that? You have to sort of think about that. So how do you navigate through that?
Well, that's planning for competition. That's planning, if you're going to give a presentation and somebody is going to say to you, ask you questions, what questions don't you want to hear? What questions are the most upsetting to you and how you prepare for them? I do some of my businesses with people who have to appear as witnesses. Witness preparation is a big thing with law firms. But I help people perform really, really well when they get into court or in a deposition, because the closer and closer and closer you get to the event, the more relaxed you can be, because that's what you want subconsciously. And when with hypnosis, we take you into that environment, you find that, you just get there and it's better. I mean, I have a client right now, we're working on time distortion for long flights. She's uncomfortable flying. And so you can take a 23-hour flight to Singapore and make it feel like 8 hours.
Yeah, my mom did. She saw someone a long, long time ago, her and her group of friends, and I think there was some type of hypnosis. Some people use it to stop smoking. Some people use it to stop eating, potato chips and carbs and stuff like that.
But this is not like Hollywood's hypnosis. This is not the Hollywood stuff. This is clinical hypnosis. So I have a couple of people right now who are going through chemo who use it to become more relaxed and comfortable when they go for their treatments. Distort the amount of time that they're in the medical facility. Whole lot of stuff. But what I do is I teach people how to do it themselves.
To hypnotize themselves, or to?
Oh yeah, to hypnotize yourself. Self-hypnosis is extraordinarily powerful. I mean, I studied transcendental meditation years and years and years ago, and I'm impatient. I couldn't wait as long as they wanted me to relax, and so I use self-hypnosis now. I'll give you an example. I had rotator cuff surgery some years ago, and my fiance of 26 years is a hypnotist too, and she hypnotized me. And I went into the hospital, and the anesthesiologist said to me, "We're using some new medication. We're wondering if we could use it with you." I said, "I should probably tell you that I've been using some hypnosis to relax and calm myself before the surgery." He said, "Well, we couldn't use you," he said, "because you'd throw our whole study off." So it's very powerful stuff.
Yeah, can anyone be hypnotized? Because I know you see it when people are up there and everyone wants to, not everyone, a lot of people want to volunteer to go up on stage and get hypnotized. And then you could tell, I think the person hypnotized can tell if someone's actually faking it or not.
Yeah, they can. And I think that this is not stage hypnosis.
Right. But I mean, you're still hypnotized. So someone has to want to be hypnotized. They have to kind of
absolutely. They want to be hypnotized, and they want the outcome that they're going to get from it.
They don't want it to get it.
Yeah, and that's you do that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then teach other people. How long did it take you to learn how to do it? And
well,
what's the effects of as you're learning and kind of maybe not doing it right or it not working?
Well, I was trained by the National Guild for Hypnotists, and they were up in New Hampshire at the time. Okay. And they would run week clinics, and then I went back for training where I could teach and certify people. So I'm able to certify and teach people hypnosis, and have them certified to be in clinical hypnosis. But you have to want to do it. It's a law. But you have to be careful.
How long does it take? I mean, is it
sessions?
Is it one time and you're done?
No, you would go. I could give you the information about who to contact to find out what their schedule is for hypnosis training. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of application to it, but it's interesting stuff.
Is there any negative thing? I mean, I know we talked about the Hollywood aspect of it, but that movie Get Out, where certain things might not even be intentional, just things that happen as you're under, or stuff that's said might backfire.
Absolutely, that's why you have to be very careful about who you're working with. You have to be prepared and trained to anticipate abnormal reactions, and make sure that people don't. It has to be approached ethically.
Do a lot of professional athletes go under hypnosis?
My bet is if they do, they don't talk about it.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of things. I agree with you that there's a lot of things that people don't want to talk about, even like the mental health and therapy, and coaches too. Even if it's like if you're a pro, and some people don't want to know that someone's struggling with something, because others will use that to their advantage.
That's why people don't ask questions frequently. That's why people don't talk about working with me. And my doctorate is in psychology, but I'm not a therapist. I don't do therapy, and I'm not a clinical psychologist. I put together this performance program system. It's the title of my book and the focus in the book, and it's just to help people get the results they want.
When you were going to school to become a doctor of psychology, what were you planning on doing if you're not a therapist and you're not practicing clinical psychology?
Well, I was brought into the doctoral program of an organization because of the work I had done with grief and bereavement around my first book, Click. And I put together some training programs for people who had to deal with high pressure situations with loss and life transition. So people in nursing schools, nurses and doctors, and that, it started there. And but basically, I didn't want to treat people clinically, and I was guided, I don't know by who, into this situation that I'm in now. But I really love what I do, and I get fantastic results from people.
You have so you wrote the book. You wrote a book before you became a doctor. Is that right?
Yes, I wrote "How Do We Tell the Children,"
and that's kind of what started it all for you.
That's what started it. It went from "How Do We Tell the Children" initially when somebody died. The second edition was "How Do You Help Somebody When Somebody in a Family is Dying." The third edition was run from the work we did with the Pentagon on traumatic loss. I worked with a whole lot of people, Matt, military survivors, police survivors, parents of murdered children, all types of organizations to normalize the impact that grief has on people, to help them to heal better. So my focus in that arena was never on the person who was grieving. It was always on the people around them. So, for example, I was at an art opening in the Hamptons, standing next to a woman, and she had a glass of wine. So did I. And I said to her, I said, "How you doing today?" She says, "Well, not very well." She says, "Today's the anniversary of the death of my father." And I said, "Oh, you must feel like crap." She said, "Yeah, but nobody lets me." So, it's helping people who are in high pressure situations, who are alone in that situation, don't have anybody to talk to about it. And that's where I find my athletes very frequently.
How did you, I mean, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but how did you get into the topic of dealing with death? Was it just...
Oh, no, my family owned a funeral service business for 125 years.
Okay. That was the 100-year business.
There were two. One was a real estate company, and the other was this funeral service business in Brooklyn. And then, and before that, they had stables in Brooklyn, and my great-grandfather used to take care of the horses for Buffalo Bill. So that's a little history.
What if before they go to see someone, before they get hypnotized, what are, if you're trying to get out of your own way, you're trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What's my obstacles? Where do people start? Because I find with almost everything, where do I start? Or just starting to do something is the hardest thing for things. So for people,
it is, and you bring up a great point, because what happens is that if you think about people have not been given permission to dream. So for me, it's dreaming. Where do you want to be? People need a target. If you're going to shoot some arrows, you better have a target if you want to hit it. And so it's creating that target for people. Where people start is getting them out of the myths that people operate under today. For example, so the question, where do you start? Every one of my clients today starts in 2027, because I want to make sure they have a target. I want to make sure they start to look at the things that they're doing that are working. What are they really good at? Matt, a lot of people don't know what they're good at. And so I help people to identify what they're good at, and then move them into an environment where they realize that God made their arms so long so they could pat themselves in the back from time to time. Doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah.
So
celebrate the wins.
Celebrate the wins. So, and the worry is a huge distraction for people. So I say to people, I have a distraction. I have a worry system. You pick a time of day, say 5 to 5:15, where you're going to do absolutely nothing but worry. And if you wake up in the morning, you're worrying about something, you go 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and your subconscious mind will let you put that off until 5 o'clock at night, as long as you show up. If you don't show up, subconscious mind says, the hell with you.
But worry, that's an interesting point too. The worrying, there are people who are just naturally worriers, and people who get stressed out very easily. I'm not one of those people, but I have, recently come to things that have worried me that haven't in the past. So, I think everyone is different. It's that's the beauty of, trying to get help, and the stuff that you do is that not everyone, there's no one answer for everyone. So you can come and talk and figure out what is it that's going on with me. Just because it works for someone else doesn't mean it'll work for me, but hopefully there's a solution for what I'm going through.
Well, the fact is that it's not a pre-canned process that works and you apply the same thing to everybody. It's all individualized. Some people want to. I'm working with a guy right now who said to me, he said, I want to work on fear of flying. And so he's been linked to his hat, his baseball hat. When he puts his baseball hat on a plane, he goes right into a trance. So, it's because, why is that work? It works because he wants it to. But, as people listen to this program, the question really is, how could this work for me? What type of, what's the potential to help me or my client? I work with sports agents a lot who will say to me, my client's having some difficulty. I want it completely confidential and under the radar. And that's where it is. I talk about phone calls that never happen. I had 2 of those yesterday. Talked to 2 guys, and there's no way that anybody's going to find out that I talked to them. That's why I deal with people on cell phones and private email addresses, not corporate email addresses. So, it's like a confidential sounding board, Do
you find that most people come to you directly, or there might be someone on their behalf?
My football clients were referred by other people that worked with me because they had a really close relationship with them. But other people will hear me. They'll invite me to speak about things. And then when I realize that somebody is not going to ask any questions at this event, that they want to ask questions privately. So I always set up time. So I could say that between now and And Monday or between now and tomorrow night, people who want to use my number and call me, there's no charge for 15 minutes on the phone, to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what I need to have happen right now. That's not happening. And it might be a management position. It might be trying to manage a team of people. It might be somebody who's trying to manage when they should be coaching. It's one of the big things we did with Hewlett Packard was when somebody, we put together a system for people to manage remote teams. So it's one thing to manage somebody when they're in the same office with you, but when they are in different countries, on different time zones, how do you manage that team of people? Well, there's a specific strategy to do that, to completely eliminate error before it happens.
Yeah. And they can find, we have information scrolling at the bottom, the phone number, email. If you go right to the website there's a calendar that you can click and book some time if you need to down here. Dr. Dan Schaefer, DanSchaeferPhD.com is the website. Dan at DanSchaeferPhD.com is the email. So if you're interested in getting a little bit more information, set some time, call, get some background, check out the books that he's written. That's a good place, the best place to start, right?
Well, when you talk about the books I've written, the last book I wrote was Click, The Competitive Edge for Business, Sports, and Entertainment. And when somebody writes a book and they come on a program like this, they say, read my book. Well, my statement is don't read my book. What you do is you go to the table of contents and you trust your subconscious mind. And as you scroll the table of contents, your subconscious mind will tell you exactly what you need to read for the next challenge you're going into, who you're going to talk. And, preparation for competition, particularly since we're talking about sports, is huge. Because a lot of people, Matt, don't prepare to compete. Athletes prepare to compete. People who are in Mark's program and who are talking about transitioning from professional sports into business are already prepared to compete, but their competition is not preparing. So what do people look for? I mean, my best example for that is Super Bowl III. Dave Herman protected Joe Namath from Bubba Smith. Anybody who doesn't know, Bubba Smith was 6'7", 360 something. Dave was 6'2", 250. I said to him, how do you do that? He said, I watch game films. I said, what did you watch for? I thought it was formations and that. He says, no. He says, I figure when a guy that big has got to move forward, he has to be standing on one foot just a little bit longer than everybody else. He said, so rather than wait for the snap, I waited till his toe came up. And when his foot came up, that's when I hit him. So, it's how do people, and if people prepared to compete in business the way these guys do, the way our athletes do, it will be a whole different ballgame. So when an athlete moves into business, he's coming with a lot of strategies and mindset that his competition may not have.
What are some similarities in business and sports?
That's a great question. It's that every deal is different. Every play is different. People really need to concentrate more. I think people say, what do you think the difference is between business and sports? I say speed. Deals happen much more slowly than a puck getting hit at the goalie. But these guys are really, they're very talented. I think a lot of people don't know how good they are at what they do. My sense is way more than you know that you know, and so do the people that's on this call. So it's how do you make use of that, and taking all of that and putting it together into a plan. Scrolling across the bottom is this thing that there's money in mistakes. One of the things that I help people do is to sell mistakes. And somebody would say, well, who would ever want to buy a mistake? I said, somebody who doesn't want to make their own. It's cheaper to buy somebody else's mistake and not make it than your own. So this is what kind of mistakes have your clients made before they became your client? And what did it cost them in money, emotion, and reputation?
Right.
all coming back on the individual. It's all about the individual. And so I have people make a mistakes list similar to that, and I show them how to market it.
Can you give us an example of a mistake?
Oh, absolutely. I have an attorney who said to me, I asked him, I said, give me an example of a mistake. He said, I have a client now who 15 years ago started a company with his friend on a handshake. He said, the company is coming down, a relationship is soured. He said, and right now, it's going to cost my client $350,000 to get out of this company. That's a lot more than he would have had to pay for the legal documents in the beginning. What other mistakes do people make? Not calling somebody sooner. So we'll just wait, So somebody has a problem, rather than pick the phone up and say, here's what's going on now. How can I take care of it? They say, well, I'll wait and see if it gets better. Well, that's okay in some situations, but not if you only get one shot. Because, when you look at sports, winning a game, being effective, people don't, there's not too many places where there are do-overs. You don't get the do-over.
Yeah, the margin for error is very slim.
And so the fact is, if I could, somebody said to me, well, how does this work with this mistake? I said, let's say you said to me, you're going to drive from New York to LA. And I said to you, well, I have a list of radar traps between here and LA. Do you want to buy that list before you get to LA, or do you want to wait till you get there? No, I want it now. So what kind of mistakes can somebody go into in school? When you talk about student athletes, I mean, I had two of my grandchildren are goalies, and they were at a goalie camp on Long Island. And the guy said to me, he said, I have an assistant coach here who's in high school. He's an incredible goalie. He said, but he's driving his parents nuts because of his grades. So the father retained me to work with the kid. And I said to the kid, what's going on? He said, my parents are up my butt for my grades. And I said, well, don't you realize your parents don't make any difference? He said, who makes a difference? I said, the college coach who's looking at you now, who's reluctant to recruit you because he doesn't know if you can stay eligible when you get into college. Totally different message. So he realized that it wasn't just his hockey ability, but it was his grades that made a difference, because these college scouts want people. They want people who can stay eligible.
Yeah, kids, it's grades. Or I got kicked off. Well, not kidding. My parents held me out of some school games because of my grades, and so I think there's a lesson there. It's sometimes more important than the actual grades. It's just, look, we have responsibilities that you got to do if you're going to also be able to participate in some other things. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned in there, as you're growing up as an athlete.
Well, I wrote an article called "You Incorporated," where I talk about kids who I say, it's difficult today to be in business when you know you're in business, but it's dangerous to be in business when you don't know you're in business. And you have a lot of kids who are really running a business, and so it's they have a kid see themselves as the CEO of their own company. And many of my student athletes get a business card with the name of their business on the business card. And these are kids in 8th grade, freshman year of high school. Because when a kid sees that he has a business and he realizes that every decision I make is a business decision, what I eat, what I drink, what I smoke, who I'm seen with, who takes my picture, where I go, all of those things are business decisions. It takes a lot of the weight off parents to say, don't do this, don't do that. The question is this going to help your business or not? So they refer to it as their business.
Yeah, I had, I used to say I was the CEO of sales for Matt Wolff.
There you go.
You're the one who's, I'm not in full control, but even as a CEO, you're never really in full control over what happens, but you're in full control over the things that you do to help make everything
Right.
happens. So.
You're in control. You're in control of your behavior.
Yeah, we talk about planning out to 2027, and putting that together. My grandma used to say, we make plans and God laughs, and so talk about flexibility and being able to adapt to what is going on, especially when you're talking about a plan that's that far out, even if you're working from behind, because as you're working from behind, there's so many things that could happen, maybe that are out of your control, you don't even know about
Right.
until you get closer that happen.
Right. Well, the interesting thing is that that's the difference between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. Your conscious mind, you'll look, listen, learn, analyze, synthesize, accept, reject, everything we do every day. Subconscious mind is different. Subconscious mind must act out every thought, image, or idea that you put into it, and it will do that relentlessly unless you get in its way. And my job is keeping people out of the way of their subconscious. So if you think a hockey goalie thinks about stopping a puck, or a baseball player thinks about fielding a grounder, he doesn't think. I mean, it just happens automatically. So trusting in your subconscious is an important part of this. One of the things that I use for people who are rehabbing is I have this gymnast that I'm working with now. She's been having a back injury. She trained on all her events under power visualization for the last 3 months. I could put her right in the gym, right on a bar, right on the bars, right on the vault, and she can watch herself do it perfectly. See, everybody says practice makes perfect, but power visualization makes perfect practice perfect.
Is that similar to putting stuff out in the universe and vision boards? And I mean, is that all in the same
I
area?
think there's part of that. There's part of that, but it's can a slalom skier practice slalom skiing and never be on the snow? I think so. Because the thing is, when you do it under hypnosis, your subconscious mind never realizes whether you actually did it or didn't. So I have baseball players now bring up an image of their home runs and hit 10 home runs before they go to bed. I have a business card. The back of my business card says, every day and every way I get better and better and better. And a prescription I have for that is you print out a 2-month calendar, you give it to your kid, and you put it next to the bed, and they say it every night for every night for 60 days straight.
Yeah.
I used to be able to give the cards out. They're almost indestructible, but I can't give them out now.
The Power of Positive Thinking. Was that?
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, who is that?
Oh God, who am I thinking about? Why can't I think of the name?
I feel like I thought it was
Zig Ziglar?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That might be a quote that Zig Ziglar did, but he was big in training. Ziglar, man, who's Tony Robbins? I thought Tony, but maybe not. I don't know.
That was before Tony Robbins.
Yeah. I feel like if people they at least piggyback off of that, and it's some type of
I think Tony Robbins has got great stuff. I followed him for a long time, but I think that one of the things that happens is people don't stick with it, as you said before. They get the tools and they don't use them. Everybody talks about the secret. You attract attention. You attract the law of attraction. And the secret behind the secret is that when you attract something and you have to do something with it, education is worthless unless if you don't use it.
Right.
Yeah.
What about, the the thought of some of this stuff is gimmicky. It's gimmicks, and some gimmicks work. Some gimmicks are great, but people
okay.
don't.
Like what would you consider gimmicky? I mean, first of all, let me talk to you about how people make decisions, Matt. I think it's interesting. One of the myths today is people buy based on features and benefits. If you tell me all the wonderful things about what you do, then I will buy what you do. But that's not the way the brain works. The brain works on skepticism, reactance, and inertia. So I'm going to expect a lot of people on this call today will be skeptical. The problem with skepticism is whether you control it or it controls you. If you control the skepticism, you can say, I'm going to try everything that Dan has said here until June 15th. And June 15th, I'm going to become skeptical. But if you're skeptical as I'm talking, you walk away with nothing. What they found is an inertia is all the things you need to do to change what you're doing now to what somebody else is suggesting. They find that if somebody on this call does presentations and is presenting a design presentation, if they include the skepticism, the reactance, and inertia in the beginning, they get a 30 to 50% higher close rate on a deal. So people say to me all the time, you do a lot with persuasion and influence. How do you close more deals? I said, I don't close any deals. People close themselves. They either say, I want to do this. I want to try this for a month. I want to try this for 2 months, 6 months, or a year, and go on from there. Or, as I said on a previous program, I don't want to go in. I don't want to be in 2027 looking backwards, wishing that I did this. So
don't hide from the objections, from the skepticism.
No, you can bring it up. I mean, somebody will say, who would ever want to buy a mistake?
Yeah.
Well, everybody today, Matt, is selling solutions. We got the solutions for your problem. Well, my reply to that is if you buy the mistake first and don't make it, you don't have to pay for the solution.
Yeah. Or you got to try and identify what their problem is, what their mistakes are.
Yeah.
And talk about
help them do that.
Yeah.
Because, it's very interesting how much of this stuff is invisible.
Yeah.
Something's just not working. I have no idea why.
Yeah, some stuff you just don't, it's we talked about that on the call before, is immeasurable data. It's like you don't know why it is, but it's happening, and you have to understand that stuff you do, you might not see exactly a result that's negative, but there could be chatter and whatever people are saying that might get passed from one to the other the same way the good things get passed, and the positive things get passed. So
people talk about social media today. I mean, it is astounding how many people are getting their careers destroyed because of something they put on social media years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was doing this hockey program, they said to me, what do you think about Facebook? I said, Facebook is like herpes. What you put on never goes away.
Yeah.
And so it's getting kids to be cautious and careful about that stuff.
It always amazes me what people will put out there, like in writing. We have thoughts all the time that are, not maybe the greatest, but, putting out there, and it's unbelievable to me. I'll never, nothing shocks me anymore, but then every time you see something like that, you're like.
Every time you say, I thought I had seen it all, but I didn't.
I thought I'd seen it all. Well, anyway, the mind is a complicated thing, but it also is been well versed and studied, and so there's a lot of good resources. I encourage everyone to take a closer look at what Dr. Dan does by going to the website, making a phone call, asking yourself, right, what are my mistakes and what are my goals, and start there, and then see what happens. We're going to get you out of here on the same question we let everyone go with the Wolff Den. You can meet and spend a day with anyone in the world. They have to be alive. You can't be related to them. Who would you choose, and what would you like to do with them?
They have to be alive. Oh man, that's a tough question. I'd probably be my kids.
You can't be related to them because you could spend time with someone ideally you can't just call and hang out.
I was going to say George Patton, but he's dead.
Yeah.
That's a tough question. I don't know that there are a lot of people that I look up to that I think, I look up to mentors, people who are doing something different, people who have a different mindset. Every once in a while, I'll run into somebody who thinks differently. I'm going to have a tough time on this question, Matt.
Well, how about this? Well, let's rephrase this. Tell me an athlete who's, at the top or near the top of their game that you'd like to have a conversation with to understand, how did they get there outside of just talent?
I think I was in that position. When I worked with Chad Pennington, we talked a lot about that stuff. Very bright guy, Rhodes Scholar, owned a bunch of businesses, incredible quarterback, incredibly dedicated to himself and his family. That to me is a role model of somebody.
Yeah, I think finding role models, finding mentors, finding people in your network that can inspire, help, and support and empathize is important. So,
well, you're right, and the networks are important today, Matt, because people go into networks now and they talk about what they do, but they're not getting the results they want. I'm dealing with two people like that right now. What language are you using when you describe what you do? How does somebody's brain work? How do you structure it so that people will think about you afterwards?
Yeah. Well, take a look at the website and get in touch with Dr. Dan. I suggest anyone who's looking to find out how they can increase their performance and get out of their own way. I think we all can use some help. It's been great chatting with you, and appreciate your time, and looking forward to more chats in our networking events and offline, and seeing where things take us.
That'll be
great. A lot more success before 27, but definitely looking at a lot more success for everyone before 2027, but definitely looking out to the future and making plans and envisioning it and making it happen.
Just dream.
Dream is a powerful thing.
Really is.
All right. Well, have a great night. We're off next week. I'll be at a sports licensing and tailgate show in Vegas. So the Wolff Den is off. We got a couple great episodes the following week. Have a great night, great weekend. Stay safe, and go out and make it happen. Talk to you.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for the invitation. It was a great interview.
Yeah. Thank you.